Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are so happy to see you here. My name is Anna Budwym.
And I'm Piotr Dlemski. Well, I think it's very great to be here with you, and of course with our distinguished participants and guests.
Of course, we cordially welcome you here with our silent applause for the day. All those who are gathered here in this very room and those who are watching us online at the international conference Let's Make Inclusion Happen, Inclusive Education for a Fair, Resilient and Competitive European Union, on behalf of the host of the conference, Ms. Joanna Mucha, Secretary of State in the Ministry of National Education, as well as the co-organizers of the conference, Ms. Renata Kaznowska, Deputy Mayor of the City of Warsaw, Mr. Mirosław Marczewski, Director General of Foundation for the Development of the Education System, Mr. Robert Wimhofer, Director of the Copernicus Science Centre, and Professor Maciej Jakubowski, Director of the Educational Research Institutes. It's our great honor to host you here and to be able to invite you to discuss so many important topics with the experts, with the decision makers, with the practitioners and representatives of international organizations.
I would like to extend a warm but silent welcome, in particular to Mr. Bogdan Cristescu, Secretary of State in the Ministry of Education of Romania. Mr. Robert Bartold, Director General of the Ministry of National Education of Poland. Mr. Marcin Józefaciuk, Member of the Polish Parliament. Mr. Hristo Petrov, Member of the European Parliament. Ms. Monika Horna-Cieślak, Ombudsman for Children. Ms. Monika Wiszyńska-Rakowska, Representative of the Commissioner for Human Rights. Mr. João Costa, Director of the European Agency for Special Needs. Representatives of the Center for the Development of Education, representatives of the European Commission, representatives of international organizations, OECD and UNICEF, representatives of ministries from European Union member states, experts from the European Commission's working groups, heads of the regional education authorities, representatives of diplomatic missions, local governments, academic community, non-governmental organizations, and also our online participants.
Ladies and gentlemen, today and tomorrow throughout the conference, we'll be investigating the key aspects of the inclusive education. We'll present innovative solutions, and we will also engage in meaningful discussions. Thanks to you, thanks to your engagement, as all of those shape the future of learning environments, but foster the equal opportunities for all. So let's make the inclusion happen together, and we are so happy to have you here. We are hoping to have with you very insightful and inspiring 2 days of our conference.
That's right. We have a great and exciting agenda ahead, filled with great discussions on how to make education accessible and inclusive for all learners. So let's get started.
Let's get started, but before we dive in, we would like to take a moment to thank our great partners for their contribution. They make this event possible. We together make it happen. So thanks to them.
Oh, yes, big thanks to all of them, and we truly appreciate your contribution in promoting education and making this gathering a success.
What's very important for us is the accessibility. So to ensure this accessibility for everyone, we have a silent language interpretation, and also we have the languages, we have the channels for the interpretation into and from languages, Polish and English.
And for those who require sign language interpretation, we have it available as well. Inclusive education is about breaking barriers and making learning accessible to everyone.
We are also thrilled today to present to you youth advocates who will be presenting to us valuable insight on the impact on the young people that this inclusive education has on an everyday basis.
Absolutely, young voices matter. And we are proud to collaborate with UNICEF to empower the next generation and ensure every learner, regardless of background or ability, has a place in education.
You may also have noticed the pins that are available at the reception desk, the ones that we are wearing as well. They represent a very important values that are connected with the inclusive education. So we are happy to chat with you.
That's right, and feel free to pick one up and wear it proudly. Okay, it's a great way to show your support, for those who need it most, and make it situation inclusive as much as possible.
And we would like also to create a safe environment, so please listen to a few rules of our code of conduct.
Let's take a moment to highlight a few principles from our of conduct to ensure a respectful and smooth experience for everyone. Silent applause instead of clapping loudly. We encourage you to use silent applause as a gesture of appreciation and respect for our speakers. Please refrain from conversations while sessions are in progress. Ensure that your mobile devices are set to silent mode, not to avoid anyone. You are, of course, welcome to move around and enjoy refreshments during designated breaks. Thank you for your cooperation. Let's work together to create an inclusive education and respectful space here today for all participants.
If for those discussion, inclusivity and Padlet, you would need the Wi-Fi, then please find the network name at the very screen. I see it's quite popular and it's very good to have Wi-Fi at your hand.
We'd like to hear from you. Use Padlet to show your thoughts, your questions or feedback. Just scan the QR code, as you can see, or follow the link on the screen to join the conversation. Your insights are essential in shaping a more inclusive education.
And your safety is our priority. So in case of any emergency, please do not hesitate to reach the number that is just now displayed on the screen.
Don't hesitate to ask for assistance if needed.
Ladies and gentlemen, and this concludes the opening words, the housekeeping words for our comfort, for our inclusivity and accessibility. Now we would like to proceed to the formal opening of this important conference. So now I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Joanna Mucha, who will deliver this opening speech. And please do not forget, we are welcoming her with the silent applause. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues. On behalf of Polish Presidency of the Council of the European Union, it is my great pleasure to welcome each and every of you to the conference Let's Make Inclusion Happen, Inclusive Education for Fair, resilient and competitive EU in Warsaw. I am thrilled to have you here with us for this special occasion. As we gathered here, let me stress that Polish Presidency of the Council of the European Union is committed to fostering a dialogue that will shape the future of education and training in Europe, particularly in the context of diversity, quality, and equity. The focus on our discussion today and tomorrow revolves around the critical value of education for all learners, regardless of the background or abilities. We will explore how education system meets the needs of diverse groups of learners while ensuring high standards of quality and fairness. We will also consider how these systems currently respond to the needs for learners with an emphasis of inclusivity and equity. Inclusion is not a luxury, it is a necessity. And it is through inclusive education that we will create a more just and equitable society, where every learner has the chance to succeed. It is a pillar of equitable and inclusive society, a society where every individual, regardless of background, has the opportunity to flourish. It is about creating an environment where all learners, regardless of their background, feel valued and supported. But inclusion goes beyond just participation. It must cultivate an ethos of respect for differences, where diversity is not merely tolerated, but embraced as a powerful asset. In this way, we not only empower individuals, but also enrich our communities, fostering a culture of belonging where every learner's unique strengths are celebrated. The concept of inclusive education and its integration into our educational system has evolved and continue to evolve over time. Today, inclusive education is increasingly recognized as a systemic approach that addresses the needs of all learners, assuring their universal right to education. The ultimate goal is to offer meaningful, for high-quality educational opportunities that are accessible to every learner alongside continuous support that fosters their growth and development. Moreover, evidence-based research shows that inclusive education benefits all learners, enhancing not only academic attainment, but also personal, emotional, and social development. We all know that when learners from diverse backgrounds and with varying abilities are included together in mainstream classrooms and their individual needs are met, they are more likely to develop positive social relationships, build greater self-esteem, and stronger problem-solving skills. These are essential qualities for lifelong learning and for active participation in society and labor markets. Through this event, seminars and plenary session, we aim to shed light on the impact of our individual and collective efforts while emphasizing the ongoing need for mutual learning and support as we move forward together. And as we move forward in our discussion, let us keep this vision at the forefront of our minds. Together, let us ensure that education becomes a force for good, a force that uplifts every learner and empowers them to shape the future with confidence and purpose. Inclusive education is implemented in many countries in various ways, depending on national comforts and particular needs of the learners. Through that presentation, I will try to briefly introduce you to actions carried out in Poland to raise the quality of inclusive education. Over the coming years, our educational landscape will undergo a transformative evolution, a change fueled by innovation, inclusivity, and the collaborative spirit that this conference so powerfully embodies. Enhancing the quality of inclusive education needs a holistic approach. That's why our efforts combine, among others, staff preparation, dialogue on school practices, IT solutions, new role of specialist provision and diagnostic centers and guidelines for teachers, funded both from EU and state budget. Among the variety of initiatives, the key one is the introduction from the 1st September 2025 of a comprehensive digital tool designed to support teachers and specialists in identification of learners. They are also designed to help all involved in education and care to better understand the barriers to learning and offer framework for support and prevention. Our minister's work extends well beyond digital transformation. We are proud to lead several ambitious EU-funded projects that enhance the accessibility and quality of education across our country. For example, the EU co-found project supporting the accessibility of education for children and youth equips educators with vital methodological materials on universal design for learning strategy, reasonable adjustments in education, and specialists tools. Monitoring and evaluation are vital to the success of these initiatives. Our forthcoming education quality assessment system will deploy a range of indicators to rigorously assess the quality of inclusive education, measure the effectiveness of our approach, and ensure that funding is utilized optimally. The insight gathered will inform future policies and help us remain responsive to the evolving needs of our learners. Central to our mission is to change the role of specialist provision in the educational system and to create the link between different sectors. Again, there are two EU co-founded projects which I would like to mention here. The first shifts the role of the counseling and guidance centers from the administrative dialogue hubs, as they are at the moment, to the centers coordinating support on local level and providing guidance to families and schools on how to address complex needs. The second project sees specialist provision in their additional role as hubs of expertise, providing assistance to mainstream schools. Currently, with 23 centers supporting inclusion in schools already in operation, our plan is to extend this network to 285 centers by 2027. To enhance funding and specialized training, we are equipping this institution to become the bedrock of inclusive educational practices. Recognizing that quality education is built on strength of the educators, we have placed human resource development at the forefront of our strategy. Through trainings and our postgraduate programs, we are investing in the classroom and specialist teacher, as well as educational leader. In 2025, the Ministry of National Education and the UNICEF Refugee Response Office in Poland signed a new action plan which reaffirmed the partnership to ensure equal access to quality, inclusive education for refugee children and their peers. Key initiatives for education are Back to Learning campaign and Accessible School for All. The Accessible School for All project is a cornerstone of our strategy and an example of good cooperation with UNICEF, which is the key partner in this project. Its goal is to empower specialists through innovative training and learning by doing. Over 1,100 education accessibility advisors improve their skills and competitiveness, ensuring that support provided to children and education is both practical and impactful. The benefits of this initiative extend to over 11,000 educators and approximately 30,000 children. Our ongoing collaboration with UNICEF Refugee Response Office in Poland further demonstrates our unwavering commitment to delivering quality education to every child, regardless of their backgrounds. Until a few years ago, the Polish schools were rather homogeneous communities. Today, they look different, largely as a result of significant migration, in particular from Ukraine, but also from Belarus, and also as a result of the increasing recognition of the individual educational needs of pupils and students. As we navigate the challenges on an often increasingly multicultural society, our governmental program, School for All, is designed to support the integration of Ukrainian pupils and students into our educational system and our society. Organized into 3 modules: intercultural assistance, the well-being of school communities, and continuous staff training, it represents our holistic approach to multicultural education. With an estimated investment of 116 million euros, financed through the European Fund for Social Development 2021-27 and scheduled for implementation for 25 to 27, this program underscores our commitment to creating resilient, inclusive educational environment. I would like to mention here the example of effective cooperation with the European Commission in this area. On January 14th, the European Commission adopted a decision amending the European Social Fund for Social Development program, providing funding from the European Social Fund Plus to cover formal education for people from Ukraine. Support will be provided to 30,000 pupils and students from Ukraine who started learning in Polish primary and secondary schools in 2024 and to 27. In line with the commitment to fostering cross-cultural understanding and international cooperation, we continue to use the support of the Erasmus Plus program. As one of the EU flagship initiatives for education, training, youth and sport, Erasmus Plus offers invaluable opportunities to engage in international exchange and collaboration. This program not only enriches their educational experience, but also cultivates a spirit of unity and diversity, an essential element of building inclusive societies. By facilitating mobility, innovation, and the shaping of best practices across borders, Erasmus Plus plays a pivotal role in shaping a more inclusive and progressive education system in the EU. I would like to remind here that one of the thematic sessions today is dedicated to discussing how to make the Erasmus Plus program more inclusive in the future. And as we are waiting impatiently for the proposal of the successor of Erasmus Plus program after 2027, I encourage you to use this opportunity to provide some suggestions or even expectations. Beyond those initiatives, I wish to acknowledge the significant role played by youth engagement in shaping our educational landscape. The recent EU Youth Conference in Lublin, which brought together over 300 participants from 40 countries, served as a vibrant platform for dialogue and exchange. Young people participation is a powerful reminder that youth are not only merely the beneficiaries of programs, they are active partners in driving change. The road ahead, all of us, to accessible and inclusive education is as challenging as inspiring. It demands the collective strength, creativity, and steadfast commitment of every stakeholder in the educational community. Today, as we convene at the Let's Make an Inclusion Happen Inclusive Education for Fair, Resilient and Competitive EU conference, we are reminded that as the success of our educational system rests on the harmonious integration and of innovative technology, targeted human resource development, and an unwavering dedication to inclusivity. In closing, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for your commitment to the cause on inclusive education. Your dedication is the driving force behind these transformative initiatives, and your collaboration is indispensable as we build an education system that embodies the values of equity, excellence, and innovation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for all your efforts today and tomorrow, and enjoy your stay in Poland. Thank you. Thank you very much for those opening words. We are so happy to see this progress, and we have an appetite for even more.
Next, we have a special video message from European Commission, Director General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, Pia Arnkilde Hansen, who will share her perspective on the importance of inclusive education across Europe.
Dear Minister Nowacka, dear Secretary of State, dear Ombudsperson, dear Deputy Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to address you as you gather for this flagship conference of the Polish Presidency on inclusive education. Let me start by thanking the Polish Ministry of National Education and the Erasmus Plus National Agency for organizing today's event. In the course of this two-day conference, our European education community will share ideas and exchange on how we can step up our action on the many aspects of inclusive education, from special needs to promoting the well-being of all pupils and teachers in school. We want to ensure that everyone can benefit from high-quality learning environments, feeling safe, valued, and included, to learn and share new knowledge. Following our discussion on this topic at the Informal Education Council in January, and with the European Commission's Union of Skills package presented on the 5th of March, this conference comes at the right time. It's the moment to consider how we can move up a gear, building on our existing achievements in the European education area. Data shows the continued importance of efforts towards inclusive education. Gender, ethnicity, disability, socioeconomic status, or having a refugee or migrant background all continue to have a disproportionate impact on learners' performance in education. The most recent data suggests that early school leaving, as just one indicator of inclusion, is almost 14 percentage points higher among 18 to 24-year-olds with a disability. And 23% of people with a migrant background have a level of education equivalent only to lower secondary. Clearly, we still have a lot of work to do. But I'm convinced that by joining forces, we can make a very real difference to people's lives in every corner of our European Union. By powering our action with tools like the EU's Erasmus Plus program, which we need to strengthen, to make sure that everyone enjoys fully and equally the fundamental right to education, and to empower all learners to pursue their ambitions in life. Thank you.
We also thank for this message, and we move on to a very important perspective, the children's rights. So it's now our pleasure to introduce to you the Ombudsman for the Rights of Children, Monika Horma-Cieślak.
She's a strong advocate for the rights children and young people, working tirelessly to ensure every child has access to education in an inclusive and supportive environment. Please take the floor.
Dzień dobry, witam wszystkich Państwa bardzo serdecznie i bardzo się cieszę i bardzo dziękuję, że dzisiaj i jutro będziemy mówić o edukacji włączającej, ale edukacja włączająca to jest koncepcja, która niesie za sobą coś bardzo ważnego. Niesie za sobą przesłanie, że każdy człowiek jest wartością, że każdy człowiek jest ważny i że każdy człowiek ma w sobie piękno, że każde dziecko ma w sobie piękno i że każde dziecko jest wartością. Ale jest także dla nas takim spojrzeniem na to, że w każdym człowieku, w każdym dziecku są zasoby, a my jako dorośli jesteśmy odpowiedzialni właśnie za to, żeby widzieć w dziecku zasoby, żeby te zasoby wzmacniać, żeby wzmacniać jego mocne strony i pokazywać, że może, że potrafi, że ten świat jest dla niego i że w tym świecie jest tak samo ważny. Myślę sobie o tym, że będziemy rozmawiać na temat sytuacji dzieci. Dzieci, które mają szczególne potrzeby, dzieci z doświadczeniem uchodźczym i wiemy o tym, jak bardzo ważne i istotne jest to, żeby te dzieci wspierać, żeby nie doświadczało ich hejt, ale żeby doświadczało ich zrozumienie, żebyśmy my mogli, a także dzieci mogły czerpać z tego, z ich doświadczeń, z ich życia i z tego, jak wygląda ich codzienna rzeczywistość. Jestem bardzo dumna, że my w Biurze Rzeczniczki Praw Dziecka mówimy o tym, że dzieci mają zasoby. Pokazujemy razem z Jankiem Gawrońskim, który jest moim młodym zastępcą, że każde dziecko i każde jego doświadczenie wzmacnia i pokazuje, że dzieci naprawdę mogą i naprawdę potrafią. Cieszę się bardzo, że te 2 dni będą właśnie o tym, że świat należy dla każdego dziecka. A naszą rolą jako dorosłych jest pokazywanie, że to hasło to nie jest pusty slogan. Także bardzo serdecznie Państwu dziękuję za obecność i za to, że będziemy się wzajemnie inspirować i pokazywać, jak tworzyć świat, który jest po prostu przyjazny. Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much for this speech. Our conference wouldn't be possible without the efforts and the dedication of the organizers.
We are pleased to invite Mirosław Marczewski, Director General of the Foundation for the Development of the Education System, to share a few words.
Madam Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor and pleasure on behalf of the Foundation for the Development of the Education System, which is co-organizer of this conference, to welcome you on this important event. For over 30 years, Foundation has been working to improve education in Poland and beyond. Since 1998, we have been part of Polish journey into European Union, and actively supported its place in the European educational community. Now, as Poland takes on its second presidency in the European Union, the Foundation, like in 2011, plays an important role in organizing presidents' events, to which the governing lobby we organize together with Minister of National Education, a youth conference, and the meeting of youth directors from European Union countries. As a national agency for Erasmus+, Foundation is deeply committed to promote inclusion and diversity, ensuring equal opportunities, and fostering an educational environment where everyone can fully participate irrespective of their individual circumstances. This commitment reflects one of the core priorities of Erasmus+, inclusion and diversity. For Erasmus+ and the European Study Corps, we work hard to make sure that everyone has access to educational opportunities. Inclusion is not just an idea, it is our responsibility. These programs help remove barriers and provide support for people who face challenges such as disabilities, financial difficulties, cultural differences, or living in remote areas. Since 2021, the Foundation has been running a special inclusion and diversity working group to ensure that these principles are put into practice. Each part of the Erasmus Plus and European Study Corps programs has a dedicated inclusion and diversity officer to help participants and organizations create inclusive projects. We also organize training sessions, workshops, and events such as the Health E Plus Motion Seminar, which focus on mental health in international mobility programs, and the Interlab Plus intercultural workshops designed to encourage dialogue and understanding. But our work doesn't not stop at the national level. Foundation is also involved in international partnerships, like Partnership for Inclusion, and collaborates with Salto Resource Centers to improve our strategies and share best practices. These partnerships have led to useful publications such as Engaging Inclusion, a guide to make youth projects more accessible for people with disabilities. The impact of Erasmus Plus and the European Study Corps is clear and confirmed by Raymond Research, an international research project aimed at analyzing and monitoring mobility activities implemented within the youth sector, conducted between 2021 and 2023 in 34 European countries. According to the research findings, 82% of project coordinators made inclusion and diversity a key part of their projects. 77% of participants learn more about diversity, and 72% develop better critical thinking skills. More than half of the participants felt that their project helped fight social exclusion. These results show that inclusion and diversity are not just goals. They make a real difference in people's life. As we take part in discussion over the next debates, let us remember that every conversation, every workshop, and every new ideas bring us closer to the future where education is open for everyone. I encourage all of you to take this opportunity to share your experiences, find new solutions, and commit to make education truly inclusive. Together, we turn inclusion into reality. Let's make inclusion happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Director Marczewski, for your speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, the city of Warsaw is a crucial partner in making the inclusive education a reality on the local level. Therefore, please welcome Renata Kaznowska, the Deputy Mayor of the city of Warsaw.
Szanowni Państwo, w imieniu swoim i prezydenta miasta stołecznego Warszawy, pana Rafała Trzaskowskiego, Witam Państwa na międzynarodowej konferencji poświęconej edukacji włączającej. To flagowe i największe wydarzenie wpisane w oficjalny kalendarz imprez organizowanych podczas przewodnictwa Polski w Radzie Unii Europejskiej w dziedzinie edukacji. Cieszę się, że w tak ważnym gronie będziemy mogli zaprezentować przykłady najlepszych warszawskich praktyk w tym obszarze. Wierzę, że podczas konferencji wypracujemy kluczowe rozwiązania i rekomendacje dotyczące poprawy dostępności i jakości kształcenia dla wszystkich uczniów i uczennic. O edukacji włączającej warto myśleć jako o procesie, w którym następuje ewolucja wynikająca ze zmian postaw i oczekiwań społecznych, postępu cywilizacyjnego, nowych możliwości medycznych, diagnostycznych, terapeutycznych, edukacyjnych, a także zmian legislacyjnych. Ważne, by proces integracji rozpoczynał się na jak najwcześniejszym etapie, aby dzieci miały możliwość poznawania się, odkrywania tego, co ich łączy, z uwzględnieniem różnic jako czynnika wzbogacającego kontakty międzyludzkie. Integracja to również więź społeczna, przynależność do grupy, poczucie, że jest się częścią zespołu. Tak pojmowana integracja wymaga świadomych, przemyślanych oddziaływań wychowawczych, rozumianych jako proces, a nie incydentalne działanie. Warszawa może być przykładem szeroko pojętego włączania, nie tylko w kontekście edukacji. Nasze miasto jest bardzo zróżnicowane pod wieloma względami. Wśród mieszkańców stolicy są osoby różnych narodowości i języków, pochodzenia kulturowego, o zróżnicowanym statusie ekonomiczno-społecznym, a także osoby z niepełnosprawnościami. Widzimy to w naszych placówkach oświatowych. Nasze miasto jest dobrze przygotowane do realizacji edukacji włączającej, ponieważ robimy to już od lat. W skali Polski jesteśmy jednym z miast, które w najwyższym stopniu spełnia przepisy prawa dotyczące wskaźników zatrudnienia specjalistów w placówkach oświatowych. W realizacji wyzwań wynikających z pracy z uczniami ze zróżnicowanymi potrzebami edukacyjnymi szkoły współpracują z wieloma instytucjami, a nauczyciele, nauczycielki i specjaliści korzystają z szerokiej formy ofert rozwoju zawodowego oraz podnoszenia kwalifikacji. Uczniowie i uczennice, rodzice są najważniejszymi beneficjentami włączającej społeczności. Dla rodziców korzystanie ze szkoły blisko domu jest dużym ułatwieniem, a dla ich dzieci niezmiernie cenny jest kontakt z rówieśnikami i środowiskiem lokalnym. Szybka diagnoza i wczesna interwencja to również istotne aspekty służące podnoszeniu efektywności edukacji włączającej. Przygotowywanie wszystkich naszych uczniów, uczennic do funkcjonowania w zróżnicowanym społeczeństwie to budowanie potencjału społecznego opartego na otwartości, empatii, inwestycja na przyszłość, służąca kształtowaniu młodzieży i dorosłych gotowych do podejmowania różnych ról społecznych i zawodowych. Korzyści i wyzwania związane z edukacją włączającą to kwestie, które należy rozpatrywać na poziomie lokalnym, regionalnym, krajowym oraz w kontekście międzynarodowym, jako światowy trend społeczny. Edukacja włączająca to spotkanie różnych ludzi, dzieci, rodziców, nauczycieli, nauczycielek, specjalistów, urzędników. Dlatego warunkiem sukcesów jest informowanie, łagodzenie obaw, rzetelne wsparcie, współdziałanie, budowanie koalicji i elastyczność systemu. Bo edukacja włączająca to szukanie rozwiązań oraz takich form pracy z dziećmi i rodzicami, które pozwalają na praktyczną realizację idei równych praw, poszanowania tożsamości i różnorodności, wspieranie zamiast wyręczania, uruchamianie procesu społecznej integracji. Obecnie inkluzja ma miejsce już we wszystkich jednostkach systemu oświaty, gdzie uczą się dzieci i młodzież ze zróżnicowanymi potrzebami edukacyjnymi. Tworzenie społeczności włączającej wymaga nieustannego wsparcia, stąd duża rola samorządu i współpracy na wszystkich poziomach, organ prowadzący, szkoła, uczniowie, uczennice, rodzice. Niezbędne jest, aby tę współpracę wspierały rozwiązania legislacyjne. Życzę Państwu dobrej konferencji, owocnych debat i wspólnych, konstruktywnych wniosków dla wszystkich państw Unii Europejskiej. Dziękuję.
Thank you so much for those words, ladies and gentlemen. The Inclusive Education Prize will combine knowledge, innovation, and engagement.
We now invite Robert Firmhofer, Director and the CEO of the Copernicus Science Centre, this is the place, to share his thoughts and opinions. Please take the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm humbled with the privilege to welcome you at the Copernicus Science Centre. As you may have noticed, it's not just a convention center. In fact, it's an interactive, hands-on science museum that includes science and technology-related exhibitions, laboratories, planetarium, and research center. The concept of inclusive education is at the very core of the mission and activities of the Copernicus Science Centre. We deeply believe that inclusive education is about building an open, empathetic, and equitable society. Our approach has a profound impact on improving access to informal science education for diverse public audiences. By fostering a culture of inclusion and equality in science learning, we create an educational space that allows for self-discovery of the world in an engaging and tailored way, tailored to individual needs. Let me highlight some key aspects of our efforts. Our building is fully adapted for people with physical disabilities. With ramps, elevators, wide passageways, and barrier-free exhibitions, we ensure that everyone can explore and enjoy our offerings. Our interactive exhibits are designed to be accessible to wheelchair users, allowing for simultaneous activity among individuals with varying motor abilities. We recognize the importance of supporting individuals with sensory disabilities. Selected events are translated into Polish Sign Language, and audio descriptions are available for many exhibitions and planetarium shows. We also offer quiet hours for visitors with sensory sensitivities, such as those on the autism spectrum, ensuring that everyone can experience our center comfortably. Our workshops and activities are tailored to meet the needs of different age groups and communities. We engage children, youth, adults, and seniors, and we have specific projects aimed at underprivileged communities and students from rural areas. An example of this is Science for You program, which bring traveling exhibitions and mobile planetarium to remote areas, making knowledge accessible to all. Within the scheme of Acera Poland, we make space education available to children and youth from diverse backgrounds, including those at risk of exclusion. Similarly, the Young Explorers Clubs program reaches individuals, including small town residents and children with lower academic performance, by providing free activities that are accessible to everyone. It's worth noting that currently over 1,000 clubs in Poland and 500 in 6 other countries, including Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, and Romania, are in operation. In addition, our Together for a Better Future program has successfully involved children from FUN and families from Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, and Chechnya through workshops, picnics, and research projects, fostering connections and understanding between diverse groups. As an institution, we are committed to diversity, not only in our audience, but also within the team. We strive for openness in our employment policy, embracing diversity in terms of physical fitness, nationality, gender, and age. Our educators receive specialized training in working with diverse groups, including workshops on empathic communication and support for employees with disabilities. We have even formed an informal inclusive language team to further enhance our commitment to inclusivity. I believe that this conference will enrich our perspective and will help us continue to support and champion these vital initiatives. I wish you a productive and successful conference.
So, Director, thank you for your thoughts and opinions.
Now let's welcome Mrs. Agata Rocznin, the president of Diversu Foundation. She educates and inspires, opens others to the diversity, and shows how, thanks to inclusive education, the future generations can present a higher level of openness and empathy.
Czy mieli Państwo kiedykolwiek takie wrażenie, że świat mógł Wam dawać inne karty niż chcieliście? Że od samego początku mogliście poczuć, że ktoś Wam mówi, że macie być kimś takim, a nie innym. Ja, drodzy Państwo, na to się nie zgodziłam. Postanowiłam, że będę burzyć stereotypy, że będę bliska ludziom i historiom ludzi poprzez inspirowanie własną historią. I chciałabym Państwa dzisiaj zabrać swoją podróż poprzez różne etapy swojego życia, zaczynając od dzieciństwa, które było bardzo niewinne, nieświadome, poprzez okres buntu, aż do momentu, kiedy potrafiłam sobie powiedzieć, że akceptuję siebie, że mogłam nazwać swoją chorobę, że jest moją przyjaciółką. I to będzie podróż nie tylko o moich historiach. Chciałabym i bardzo pragnę tego, żeby to była taka manifestacja, taki apel o tym, że każdy z nas może przełamywać bariery, że każdy z nas ma w sobie potencjał na to, żeby zdecydować się na odważne życie. Drodzy Państwo, kiedy byłam małą dziewczynką, moja niepełnosprawność była dla mnie czymś takim naturalnym, czymś, co nie było dla mnie inne. Było to dla mnie tak jak codzienne życie. Nie widziałam w tym nic innego, że mam problemy na przykład z poruszaniem się, że z podwórka jak wracam, to mam zdarte kolana, że kiedy chcę pobiegać szybciej, to często się przewracam. I te potknięcia nauczyły mnie też tego, że trudy mogą być każdego dnia. Moja edukacja nie zaczęła się od przedszkola, dlatego że wtedy nie było takich miejsc, żeby można było edukować się w przedszkolu dla dzieci z niepełnosprawnościami. Moi rodzice zaczęli moją edukację od szkoły podstawowej i nie taką, jak proponowali im nauczyciele, czyli lekcje indywidualne w szkole, tylko rodzice postanowili, że też bardzo chcą tego, żebym mogła uczyć się z rówieśnikami. Że nie chcą, żebym była zamknięta w 4 ścianach w domu. Moja mama musiała zrezygnować z pracy, żeby być ze mną. Mój tata pracował i razem z mamą musiałyśmy się uporać z niedostosowaną szkołą. Mama nosiła mnie po schodach, mama pilnowała mnie na przerwach, żeby nikt mnie nie przewrócił, bo mogło to grozić poważnym kontuzjom. Mama po prostu była ze mną, żebym mogła być razem ze wszystkimi. I pamiętam taką jedną dyskryminację rówieśniczą, która zapadła mi po dzisiaj. I w zasadzie mogłabym taki żal, takie rozgoryczenie nosić w sobie, bo koledzy naśmiewali się ze mnie, w jaki sposób się poruszam. Nazywali mnie kaczka. I w zasadzie takie emocje mogłabym nosić na wyposażeniu swojego plecaka. Ale ja postanowiłam to zostawić. Postanowiłam, że będę szła dalej. Nie dla nich, ale dla siebie samej. I drodzy Państwo, myślę, że mogę z pełną dumą powiedzieć, że miałam ogromne szczęście, że miałam rodziców, którzy nie traktowali mnie jak biednej Agatki. Bardzo często skłaniali mnie do tego, żebym była samodzielna, żebym mogła kontrolować swoje ciało, swój umysł w taki sposób, żeby jak najwięcej czerpać ze swojego życia. I do dzisiaj pamiętam kilka takich zasad, wartości od swoich rodziców, którzy włożyli mi do głowy pewne 2 zdania. Nie bądź ostrożna, tylko spróbuj. Nie zrobisz tego, ale uczyń, żeby to było możliwe. Znajdź sposób na to, żeby coś zrobić. I przykładem takiej mojej moich rodziców determinacji w wychowaniu mnie, we włączaniu, myślę, że to jest taki ciekawy, codzienny przykład. Myśmy mieszkali na 2. piętrze w bloku, bez windy. Mój tata pracował, moja mama się zajmowała mną i kiedy wracałyśmy na przykład ze szkoły, moja mama mówiła mi coś takiego. Agatko, to ty teraz wchodź po schodach, bo możesz, a ja pójdę gotować obiad i za godzinę jak do mnie przyjdziesz, to ja już będę z nim na ciebie czekała. Ja wtedy mówiłam mamie, że ty mnie chyba nie kochasz. To było dla mnie coś niesprawiedliwego, ale wiem, że takie trudy, które fundowali mi moi rodzice, dało mi moją tożsamość, która jest dzisiaj silna i akceptująca. I kiedy rodzice bardzo mocno podkręcali mi tą śrubę i dawali mi różne obowiązki, w których mogę się zrealizować, to pomyślałam sobie, że ja z tą niepełnosprawnością mogę być też skuteczna. Też mogę prowadzić siebie przez to życie. I myślę, że ta edukacja włączająca jest bardzo ważna, dlatego że są dzieci, które nie mają takiego wsparcia. I ta edukacja włączająca może się właśnie stać tym, czym byli dla mnie moi rodzice. No i jeden z takich bardziej atrakcyjnych, myślę, momentów w życiu, które każdy z nas tutaj miał, czyli bunt. Powiem Państwu, że to był taki moment, kiedy dość mocno we mnie uderzyło to, że jednak jestem inna. Że jednak nie wszyscy patrzą na mnie tak samo, że patrzą na mnie raczej inaczej. Że koleżanki, które chodziły przecież na dyskoteki, nie zawsze chciały mnie zapraszać. Jak już się zdarzyło, że poszłam na tą dyskotekę, to bardzo często wózek, który był mi już niezbędny, stawiałyśmy w szatni. Tak, bo ja nie chciałam się przyznać do tego, że jestem osobą z niepełnosprawnością. Powiem wręcz, że ja udawałam, że jestem osobą zdrową. I ten gniew, słuchajcie, kiedy poczułam, że nie wszystko mogę zrobić, spowodował, że chciałam się zbuntować, a w zasadzie chciałam bardzo mocno udowodnić sobie, ale też i światu, i innym, że jestem wartościową osobą, że mogę coś z tym zrobić, że nie o to chodzi w życiu, że martwimy się tym, czego nie możemy, tylko po to mamy to życie, żeby korzystać z to, co właśnie otrzymaliśmy. Przyznaję, że zazwyczaj dobrze wychodziłam na zdjęciach. I pomyślałam sobie, że to jest mój potencjał, że uderzę w taką branżę, która będzie hermetyczna, która będzie oblana dużymi stereotypami, a że ja mam potencjał do tego, żeby to zmienić. I postanowiłam, że wejdę w świat mody, w świat wybiegów, w świat sesji fotograficznych, bo bardzo zależało mi nie tylko, żeby też udowodnić innym kobietom, że niepełnosprawność nie wyklucza, że również może być włączona w tak hermetyczny świat, jakim jest moda. I miałam taki sen, miałam takie marzenie, żeby właśnie pokazać tą siłę w sposób, który uwielbiam. To znaczy, lubię się uśmiechać, lubię pozować, lubię występować w fajnych kieckach, więc chcę z tym coś zrobić. I drodzy Państwo, było trudno, bo wejście na szczyt w modelingu trwał ponad 8 lat. Stukałam w różne drzwi, które zazwyczaj nie chciały się otwierać. Przebijałam różne szklane sufity. I był taki moment wątpliwości, czy rzeczywiście to jest to coś niedostępnego dla mnie. Ale wtedy sobie pomyślałam, okej, jestem osobą z niepełnosprawnością, ale to nie oznacza, że nie mamy prawa sięgać po więcej. Że świat Jupiterów, dlaczego ma być też nie dla nas? Dlaczego nie możemy pokazać piękna w różnych formach? I w 2006 roku wystąpiłam na pokazie mody od Kitir, jednej z najsłynniejszych projektantek mody Ewy Minge, wśród top modelek pełnosprawnych. I ja to widzę jako symbol mojego uporu, mojej determinacji, która została wyniesiona bardzo wysoko. Dzisiaj, kiedy świat mody jest bardziej otwarty na różnorodność, w zasadzie różnorodność można powiedzieć, że stała się modna. Zależy mi na tym, żeby nie tylko realizować swoją misję przełamywania barier, ale żeby też pokazywać innym ludziom, nie tylko osobom w pełni sprawnych, ale też osobom z niepełnosprawnościami, że piękno może kształtować się w różnych obrazkach, że ono powoduje, że ktoś, kto może się poczuć wykluczony, może zacząć w siebie wierzyć. I słuchajcie, kiedy po tym takim wielkim moim marzeniu, kiedy nabrałam tej dużej odwagi, bardzo chciałam wystąpić, może już nie w takim show, ale w takich różnych rolach społecznych, w takich różnych rolach też zawodowych, bo to są przecież drogi, które realizują każdego z nas. Jak było? Wielu ludzi mówiło, że takiej kaleki nikt nie zechce, że osoba na wózku to osoba, która niewiele może, więc nie znajdę mężczyzny, który zaopiekuje się mną, a ja nim, że połączymy się w miłość. Dziś jestem szczęśliwą i dobrą żoną. Mój mąż gdzieś tutaj jest, to może potwierdzić. I wiemy, że wiele rzeczy, które razem robimy, wymagają więcej czasu, więcej determinacji, więcej mądrego zarządzania czasem. Bardzo duże znaczenie ma logistyka, którą mój mąż na co dzień się zajmuje. Wiemy, że warto, dlatego razem jesteśmy już 20 lat. Wielu też mówiło, że jak będę chciała mieć dziecko, to zrobię sobie krzywdę, ale nie tylko sobie, ale też mojemu mężowi. Przecież ja nie przewinę dziecka. Przecież ja go nie podniosę. Przecież jak ja go będę wychowywać? Poza tym w tamtych czasach też nigdzie nie można było znaleźć w internecie, że osoba z niepełnosprawnością, z rdzeniowym zanikiem mięśni urodziła dziecko. Dziś jestem wystarczającą matką. To jest Kuba, który ma dzisiaj 15 lat. I wiemy, że to, że on z małą nie wszystko może zrobić szybko, że nie zawsze jest wygodnie, że nie zawsze zrealizujemy jakąś czynność, która wymaga pośpiechu, to myślę, że to wszystko też jego uczy. I też mam taką nadzieję. No i co mi jeszcze mówili? Mówili mi, że mając rentę, pewnie będę w domu. Bo po co wychodzić? Po co starać się o pracę? Przecież mam rentę, mam świadczenia. Przecież jaką ja pracę znajdę? Co ja będę? Telemarketerką? A może będę sprzedawać jakieś rzeczy przez telefon? Albo będę składać długopisy? Dzisiaj jestem prezeską wyjątkowej organizacji. Jestem ekspertką do spraw włączania osób z niepełnosprawnościami w jednym z największych banków w Polsce, BNP Paribas. I robię to, co najlepiej mi wychodzi. Edukuję, dzielę się doświadczeniem, inspiruję innych. I mogłabym jeszcze wymieniać te różne swoje role społeczne. Jestem na przykład alpejską rowerzystką. Jestem sumienną pływaczką. Myślę, że najtrafniej powiedzieć, że jestem ambasadorką codziennej różnorodności. Bo codzienne trudy powodują, że jesteśmy silniejsi, że możemy wyjść z tego z lekcją, a nie z czymś, co powoduje, że się poddajemy. I kiedy tak naprawdę ten mój wózek wcześniej mi przeszkadzał, zrealizowałam swoje marzenie, że mój wózek stał się moim atutem. Że wcześniej musiałam zakładać tą maskę. Maskę pewności, maskę, która zakrywała też moje lęki. To, że czasami się też po prostu bałam. I wiecie, kiedy byłam najbardziej wolną osobą? Kiedy przestałam udawać przed samą sobą. I kiedy uzmysłowiłam sobie, że siła do działania, siła do życia tkwi tak naprawdę w akceptacji samego siebie. Już wiecie, że moją misją jest przełamywanie barier, zamazywanie podziałów między osobami w pełni a osobami z niepełnosprawnościami. Taka zmiana spojrzenia na niepełnosprawność. I kiedy 3 lata temu pomyślałam sobie, że ja chcę robić to mocniej, że ja chcę robić to szerzej, żeby osoby z niepełnosprawnościami były widoczne i żeby były jeszcze bardziej włączane w społeczeństwo. I dzisiaj oswajam dzieci z niepełnosprawnością. Dlaczego oswajam? Bo ten temat jest cały czas tematem tabu. Tutaj widzicie na zdjęciu, że witam się z uczennicą. To jest bardzo ważny moment, kiedy dzieci poznają osobę z niepełnosprawnością, bo jednak większość dzieci w pełni sprawnych nie ma takiej możliwości. Nie ma doświadczenia, nie ma wiedzy, a bardzo często brak wiedzy, brak świadomości, że osoby z niepełnosprawnością są wśród nas, powodują te stereotypy, powodują te negatywne przekonania. I co dzisiaj robimy w Fundacji Diversum? Bo po to ją założyłam. Dzieci mogą tak naprawdę wejść w rolę, chociaż przez chwilę, w rolę praktycznego pojęcia niepełnosprawności. to na przykład dzieci mogą spróbować jeździć na wózku. Po co? Żeby mogły zrozumieć, że nie wszystko jest na wyciągnięcie ręki. Że czasami droga do szkoły, która dla nich jest równa, dla osoby, która porusza się na wózku, może być bardzo wyboista. Dzieci też wchodzą w rolę na przykład osób niewidomych. Wtedy orientują się, jak bardzo zmysł dotyku, zmysł zapachu, węchu jest bardzo ważny. Tak? Przekładają swoją perspektywę na to, kiedy przez moment wyłączają te swoje zmysły, które mają na co dzień. To powoduje, że dzieci czasami nie chcą mi uwierzyć, jak zadaję im pytanie, a wiecie, że osoby niewidome potrafią czytać? Kiedy dostają tablicę z Braillem, z alfabetem Braille'a, co mnie zawsze interesuje, niektóre dzieci mówią, to jest bardzo łatwe. Ale jest to dla nas, osób widzących, dość trudna komunikacja, ale dzieci otrzymują wiedzę, że jest to możliwe. I powiem wam szczerze, że najbardziej czuję, że działam na rzecz inkluzywności, kiedy zaczepiają mnie czasem nauczycielki, nauczyciele. Po kilku miesiącach, a nawet latach przeprowadzonych warsztatów, że wspominają Agatę, czy Przemka, czy Mariusza, którzy są ambasadorami naszej fundacji, że pamiętają takie, wybrałam 3 największe kąski edukacyjne, że pamiętają, że jak chcemy pomóc, to najpierw musimy spytać, czy osoba potrzebuje pomocy. Nie wiem, czy ktoś z was tutaj miał takie doświadczenie, że bardzo czasami chcemy nachalnie pomagać. To nie jest nic dobrego. Warto pytać, warto rozmawiać. Drugą rzeczą jest to, że dzieci pamiętają, żeby się nie wyśmiewać z drugiej osoby. Że każdy z nas może mieć różne potrzeby. Że każdy z nas może być różny. I nie można się z tego wyśmiewać, na co nie mamy wpływu. Tak, na co, w jaki sposób się poruszamy, czy w jaki sposób się komunikujemy. Ja często im zadaję pytanie, a wiecie, z czego się można naśmiewać? Z lenistwa. Tak, że komuś z was nie chce się wstać, a ja na przykład potrzebuję asystentki, która pomaga mi wstać z łóżka. Drodzy Państwo, edukacja włączająca w szkole, w podstawowej czy w liceum, gdzie prowadzimy takie warsztaty, nie tylko ma sens, ma też duży sens poza domem. Co zrobiliśmy jako fundacja? Moim marzeniem było, żeby dzieci zostawić po warsztatach z czymś, z czym będą mogły edukować się razem ze swoimi opiekunami, razem ze swoimi rodzicami. Postanowiłam, że stworzymy książki edukacyjne. I to nie są książki, które opowiadają o słoniku, który jeździ na wózku, albo o małpce, która jest głucha. Tylko te książki opowiadają o prawdziwych bohaterach, o osobach, które istnieją. Pierwsza książka, Agata szaleje na kółkach. Mają Państwo okazję dzisiaj w swoich torbach dostaliście od nas książkę po angielsku. Zobaczycie, może się zszokujecie, tak jak dzieci na przykład, które nie wierzą, że osoba na wózku może skoczyć ze spadochronu. Dzieci na przykład nie wierzą w to, że osoby bez nogi mogą grać w piłkę nożną. Dzieci na przykład nie mogą sobie wyobrazić tego, że jak można tańczyć, kiedy nie słyszy się muzyki. I kiedy te książki trafiają do domu, bardzo często wiemy, i też jest to nasz cel, żeby edukować rodziców, bo rodzice też czasami mają trudności w komunikacji na temat, dlaczego ktoś ma niepełnosprawność, dlaczego ktoś dziwnie, w cudzysłowie, zachowuje się, tak? Bo nie mają takich doświadczeń. Ja mówię dzieciom, bądźcie ambasadorami dobrej zmiany przed swoimi rodzicami. to wy dzisiaj jesteście ekspertami. Możecie mówić o tym, że osoby z niepełnosprawnością mogą zakładać rodzinę, jeśli się na to zdecydują. Mogą spełniać swoje marzenia. I my też, będąc obok, możemy im w tym pomóc. Nauczyciele też nie zostają bez prezentów. Nauczyciele to są bardzo ważni, nauczycielki, bardzo ważni dla nas ludzie, bo wiemy, że to są ambasadorzy takich codziennych zmian. I przygotowaliśmy dla nauczycieli takie karty inkluzywne do nauczania dzieci takich włączających zachowań wobec osób z niepełnosprawnościami. Bo to, że mamy pewien rodzaj dostępności, którą widzimy, to jedno. Ale druga rzecz jest bardzo ważna, jak szanujemy drugiego człowieka, jak zwracamy się do drugiej osoby. Czy patrzymy na osobę z perspektywy możliwości czy ograniczeń. Takie karty pomagają nauczycielom opowiadać dzieciom o różnych niepełnosprawnościach. I co? Teraz taki przycisk dla was chciałabym zostawić, że każdy z nas może być edukatorem, że każdy z nas może w różnych sytuacjach czy mówić o osobach z niepełnosprawnościami, czy mówić o osobach z różnymi potrzebami, że te osoby są wśród nas, nie obok. Każdy z nas może w codziennym życiu mówić o tych osobach w sposób włączający. I jak sobie tak patrzę na to całe swoje życie, na to, że mieliście też okazję posłuchać taką moją przygodę losu, nie przeciwności losu, tylko taką przygodę, która pokazuje działania na rzecz inkluzywności poprzez zmaganie się z różnymi etapami w życiu. Bo pamiętajmy, że nie zawsze jesteśmy gotowi na zmianę, ale nie wycofujmy się. Może potrzebujemy chwilę, żeby coś więcej zrozumieć, czegoś więcej się dowiedzieć, coś więcej usłyszeć od drugiej osoby. I tak sobie myślę, że każdy z nas tutaj w swoim życiu miał takie uczucie wykluczenia, miał takie poczucie, że może być inny. Ale myślę, że jestem tutaj stabilnym dowodem na to, żeby Państwu powiedzieć, że różnorodność jest siłą, że różnorodność wzbogaca świat, wzbogaca komunikację międzyludzką, że te rozmowy na przykład o niepełnosprawności wspierają rozmowy o akceptacji, o tolerancji, o empatii do drugiego człowieka. I myślę, że wy też macie na to swoje dowody. Myślę, że też przełamujecie swoje bariery, które są przed wami, które zapewne będą, i też możecie mieć swoje dowody na to, że siła w każdym nas drzemie. Na koniec chciałabym spytać, czy jesteście gotowi przełamywać bariery razem ze mną? Bardzo się cieszę. Dziękuję Państwu za to, że mnie posłuchaliście. Mam nadzieję, że w mojej historii usłyszycie też echo własnych zmagań, bo czasem warto posłuchać. Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you, Anna, for your powerful and inspiring speech. We are glad that you are here with us today.
Thank you very much indeed, and we are ready to invite to the stage our next distinguished guest, who is Dr. João Costa, Director of the European Agency for Special Needs and Inclusive Education, who will share his expertise on inclusive education practices and policies.
Please join us in welcoming Dr. Costa to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure. I will say for us to be here because there are many members of the agency at this conference. I'd like to start by thanking again the Polish government for putting it's a neighborhood thing from Portugal to Spain, the Polish government for putting inclusive education so high in the agenda for this semester in the Polish presidency. You're really setting an example for all the other countries will hold the president of the council. I should have a thing to translate. It's very difficult to speak after such an inspiring speech, and I have this feeling of being a bit an anticlimax after I got the speech. But I was thinking as she was speaking that, thank you. Imagine you looked around and we all looked the same. We were exactly the same. There would be no differences among us. We all had exactly the same face. We all had exactly the same hair. We spoke exactly the same language. All the colors here behind me would be exactly the same. This would be an extremely boring event. This would be an extremely uninteresting setting. So what I want to tell you is the obvious. Diversity is normal. What is normal is that we are different. So let's not ever pretend that we all look the same. Now, imagine something much more terrible. Imagine that our dear organizers had organized this event in such a way that we would be separated in different rooms according to our features. So men would be in one room, women would be in another room, people with long hair would be in a different room, people who spoke only English would be in a different room, or maybe in a different building. I think by the end of the day, we would be each of one isolated in a different room. Now, this is the reality for many children with specific characteristics. Not only they are segregated inside their school, but sometimes they are segregated in different spaces. We still have countries in Europe and outside Europe where children with disabilities have to travel 200 kilometers to go to school. Imagine that we would do doing this to one of us. We would come here and our Secretary of State would say, for you, the meeting is on the other side of town. It would be unacceptable. Yet it appears that we still feel at peace with some of these settings for children. So what we have to do is to make inclusion happen, like in the title, in the very well-chosen title of this event. I don't have much time, but I will try to be very straight to the point and hope that these words at some point, not working. Okay, inclusion is about imagination and improvisation. So let's go on about this. So what I will try to do is to show you that there are more things that we can do. There are challenges that we face. So I will go very quickly through the concept again, because many times we use the word inclusion, but we mean different things. I think with Agatha, we had the perfect illustration of what we're talking about when we're talking about inclusion. It's not about living in a different world. It's about full participation where we are, full belongingness, full sense of belongingness, and by all of us making a difference to create the opportunities for achievement for all. Then I will go through some of the barriers that education systems still face in the implementation in many cases. And we had an informal council of ministers here in Warsaw last month or 2 months ago. And it was very clear that all policymakers agree that inclusion is a goal. The tough nut to crack is how to go about it. how to overcome all the barriers and obstacles. What do we have to do to implement it? So I will quickly go through the challenges and then share with you some of the recommendations from the European Agency for Inclusive Education that, given the evidence that we've been building, we can share with you. So again, inclusion is about participation. It's not only about granting access, it's about all of us sharing the same space, sharing the same learning opportunities, being together in the same classroom. It's not about segregated spaces, segregated curricular spaces, segregated settings. And this is more costly. It's more, it requires more work. It requires more imagination. One of the key aspects is that inclusive education systems are preventative. In general, governments are very good at seeing that something didn't work. Some learners didn't learn. And then we find these remediation programs, after school programs, special curricula to make sure that at the end of the day, they learn something. The key aspect of inclusive education systems is that we work at the onset. We prevent, we do not act on something that already failed. And another key aspect is that we are talking about all learners. Yes, learners with disabilities face difficulties, but others face, as was mentioned already several times this morning, because they are immigrants, because they don't speak the national language of the country where they are going to school, or because they are discriminated by their gender or by their gender orientation, or because they are experienced and transient stage in their life that creates social, emotional barriers for learning. So, and this is why it's so important that when we're talking about inclusive education, we are not necessarily labeling people, because when we label, we forget the richness and the complexity of each and every one of us. So we are more focused on the needs rather than focused on referencing or saying, if you are a child from an immigrant background, the solution for you is this one. If you are a child with attention deficit disorder, the solution for you is another one. What if you are an immigrant with attention deficit disorder? You will not fit in any of these boxes. So let's just look at individuals and find out what each one of them needs. A very good message for special for politicians is that inclusive education is good for everyone. It's obviously good for the learners. They learn better. They participate. They become citizens, full-fledged citizens who can do everything another citizen can do. But as Agatha also showed, it's also good for the peers, because the others also learn. They learn about empathy. They learn about their role in society. They build an inclusive mindset. They will be better adults in the future if they learn together with their peers. But, and this is what ministers like to hear about, especially the ministers of finances, it's cheaper to include than not to include. It's cheaper, it's more cost effective to have the students in the mainstream schools than in segregated schools. Let me briefly go through the 4 challenges that I would like to share with you. First, some facts, and these are the facts that the European Union has been discussing, and especially with the recent presentation of the Union for Skills agenda. This is something that is being discussed. We know that there is some decline in academic performance in the European Union. We know that there is some growing early school leaving in some countries. We know, and the OECD is also teaching us a lot about this, that there are strong correlations between academic achievement, well-being, and the sense of belongingness. We know there's more and more diversity in our schools in the European Union. And we also know that the share of learners that are educated outside mainstream education is ranging from 0.1% in some countries to over 7% in some countries. If we look at this room, it means that maybe the first 2 rows would have to be invited to leave now and go to another setting. It's not fair. These variations have several causes. They have to do with different identifications, with different assessment procedures, with different financing mechanisms. Let me go through the 4 challenges. The first one is about teachers. We know that we are facing a teacher shortage crisis. It's a global crisis, and teachers report that they are unprepared and they need more training to cope with diversity. So we have to be very much aware that a risk is in front of us, that in order to cope with teacher shortage, we say no to diversity. That's not the solution. What this means is that we need to attract the best teachers, but we need to train them for reality. And the reality, as I started, is diversity. The reality is not a fantasy that we all look the same, behave the same, act the same, speak the same. Second, and context is a societal context. Second challenge is societal context. We know that we are living times of polarization. We know that new forms of hate speech are emerging. And in this context that we all fear of some erosion of democratic values, there is room for segregated speeches to come. So we have to be very much aware of this, and also be very much aware that inclusive education is not about some abstract dimension. It's about democratic values. And so we cannot at the same time say we defend inclusive education and at the same time say we don't care about these emerging speeches all over the world. Finances are a challenge. The life, I've been a minister of education in the past, and I know my life would have been so much happier without the minister of finances in my life. But this also means that we have to be smart in how we use the money. Again, if we are very good at allocating funds for remediation, we are not so good at allocated funds for prevention. The more we invest on prevention, the less we will invest on remediation. And remediation is always more expensive than prevention. The fourth challenge is data, and at the Informal Council of Ministers, this was very much discussed. We need to be better at collecting data, data on the learners, data on efficiency, data on teacher preparedness, and data even on the lack of awareness or the resistance to change. If we don't have data, we don't have the evidence to move forward in this agenda. So let me move to the recommendations. The main thing I would like to say is that we have to be like these 3 kids. We have to put our helmets of creativity. We have to turn on our idiometer and not just say, we've always done things this way, because when we always did things this way, we left out many, many learners. So we have to do different, but we have to do this in an integrated way, in a global strategy. If we say, I have the curriculum, and then I have an Inclusive Education Act, this means that inclusion will not be embodied in the curriculum. If I say, I have the teachers, and then I have the special needs teachers, this means that the main teachers will never be involved in inclusion. So, and this is what I mean by integration and an integrated strategy. So 7 recommendations in brief. First one, we implement better if we have a single legislative framework. So as I was saying, if our legislation is about the curriculum, but it is also about the cross-sector collaboration, it's about the resources, it's about what is needed for professional learning. If we legislate in silos, the outcome will be in silos. Second recommendation, use the European Agency on Special Needs and Inclusive Education. decide on the basis of evidence. And there's lots and lots of evidence on what works and does not work. This is just the front page of 7 reports that we have, but there are many others that are touching exactly on this bridging from principles to action, from legislation to implementation, from implementation to monitoring. So this debate, why am I bringing this here? Because this debate sometimes is very much about strong and hot opinions, but it has also to be based on evidence. If it is only based on opinions, opinions come and go. The evidence stays, and there is evidence, and we can assist you in this. Third recommendation is about cross-sectoral collaboration. Sometimes schools, and in particular teachers, carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. And we want education to solve all the problems in the world. But many of the problems come from outside the school. So if we don't have inclusive education policies being developed at the same time as we work with the finances, as we work with the transition from school to the labor world, with health policies, with housing, because many things come from the structure, how the cities developed, how we created ghettos in the cities. And these ghettos are reproduced in the school distribution and in the school structure. So the more we collaborate with other sectors, the better the responses are given at school. Children are in school from 8 to 3, 9 to 5, but at the end of the day, they go back to their neighborhood, to their families, and the work has to continue there. Otherwise, there is the reset by the end of the day, and everything starts again in the morning. We also have, it's my first recommendation, to link inclusive education with global issues. We know there are new demands for diversity, or at least new awareness for some focus of diversity. For instance, again, immigration has been recognized as one main challenge here in Europe. So this means that we have to have policies for immigrants as students, but we also know, and I'm a linguist by background, that we learn better a foreign language when we are in immersion. So if we created segregated settings for learners with a different language, they will not be learning the language we want to learn as productively as if they are in mainstream classes with their peers. We are undergoing this huge and rapid technological revolution. We have a resource in our hands. We are all afraid of artificial intelligence, but we have a tool. I've experienced playing with ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT, could you create a lesson plan for a child with attention disorder to learn simple equations? And by the way, he loves Legos. And then in less than 1 minute, I have a lesson plan that requires my critical view, but saves me time. So rather than just being afraid, let's explore this at a potential. And we know that there is a lot going on. We already having climate refugees, people who are escaping extreme adversity where they live. So we need also to create awareness on these more global challenges. Big challenge and recommendation. In some countries, there is this fear expressed by policymakers, but also by the families, that if a child is brought into a mainstream school, the child will lose support. This requires a new strategy of designing the role of specialist provision in mainstream schools. We have the resources in segregated schools. Why not transform these resources in support resources in the mainstream schools? Why not rethink what is initial and teacher preparation and professional development so that teachers are better equipped to deal and also to be not technicians or specialists, but be aware of the resources that learners need. And this is about also, when we're talking about resources, what I say here is redesigning the grammar of schools. What I mean is, it is very obvious that we all complain about lack of resources, but sometimes we forget to look around the school and think that everything can be a resource for inclusion if we want it. The school librarian can be a resource for inclusion. The peers, the other learners, are a very important asset for inclusion, and we tend to forget this. Almost final recommendation: work with parents. Parents sometimes are afraid. We want all the parents in the world to be your parents, Agatha. Parents sometimes are afraid, but they know better. And if we communicate with them, we can learn better what is the right response for learners. I always like to say this: preschool is not a problem. Kindergarten is a very inclusive setting. It's a place where learners are together, where the difference is valued, where children work in projects, where they move freely around the classroom and they learn. So why should it be different in high school? Let's all go back to preschool and see how they work there, because there are lessons to be learned. Another important dimension is that we do not make inclusion by snapping our fingers. This has to be a participatory process, and we have to have the humility of knowing that it works better if it is incremental. And finally, we need to build societal consensus. We need to have the role of testimonies, like we had today. There are so many positive stories, and people need positive narratives. A child without provision hits the news very quickly and creates an atmosphere to say inclusion is impossible. But for this child, there are 99 children with positive narratives, and we have the role of making these narratives known to everyone. There are schools for which inclusion is natural. Let's turn these schools in lighthouse schools and help them be an example for other schools. Let's dialogue, let's not fight. Let's promote dialogue and discuss with each other why we are not in agreement sometimes. And I will close with this because I'm way over time. Let's learn from history. We had a period in the history of Europe when women could not vote. And why could not women vote? Because they were not capable, because the system was not prepared, because men didn't want it. And then someone had the idea, it is possible, they are capable, the system is prepared, and if it's not, we have to change it, and men have to want it. Now, if we think of learners with disabilities, with an immigrant background, whatever you can think of, it's always the same story, and it's always the same argument. So if it was possible in the past for women to vote, it will be possible today for all learners to grow together in the same school, in the same classroom, and benefiting each other from their difference. Because again, being different is what makes us human and what makes us natural and normal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your recommendations. Thanks for joining this conferences, Dr. Kost.
And now to continue our discussion, we are honored to introduce Professor Maciej Jakubowski, the Director of the Educational Research Institute, who focuses on student assessments, experimental research, and curriculum reform, a distinguished expert in the field who's taking over the stage right now.
Situation, keeping you between presentation and coffee. Let's talk about a very important topic from my perspective, about evidence. Without evidence, we will not have inclusive education. That's what I believe. And João mentioned already that using evidence-based approaches is very important. Why it is important? Because we all have limited resources. We all want inclusion to happen. But so we have to implement interventions in which we know, we don't just believe, but we know they work and they are effective. So let's start with some questions. Do we have evidence of student outcomes, teaching methods, interventions to make inclusion happen? About student outcomes, yes, we have some evidence. But if you, for example, want to discuss what happened during the pandemic to migrant students or to students with special needs, then the evidence on that is very limited. We know broadly, as mentioned in the previous presentation, that academic performance decline, but then going into subgroups using international studies is very difficult for a very simple reason. These students are included in these studies or not, but even if they are included, there is, for example, 50 of them or 15 for them per country. So we don't have enough data on them to make any judgments. Teaching methods. Yes, we have some evidence, but this evidence, which is really reliable, is not widely known to teachers. I will give you some examples in a second. We also in education tend to dispute everything. I have this research, I have that research, it's showing different things. We are all equal. Teachers, of course, are not prepared to discuss this. They are not researchers. So we need something which we call knowledge brokers. So those who know research, people like in my institutes, who translate that into evidence that is actionable, that it's easy to understand to teachers, and that's reliable. And about interventions to make inclusion happen, we just learned that at the pages of the agency we have some evidence, but still, if you want to focus on particular groups of some students, on some interventions, then the evidence is very often missing. Before getting there, let's talk about how we can get grasp of evidence and to distinguish between these sources. So first source is classroom. Of course, teachers every day work with students. They collect some data, maybe not using scientific methods, but they can also do that if they have tools for it. So at this small scale, it is also possible to get information back and to take action. So it's not at the ministry level when it takes years. It's in the same classroom where you can do something. And I will mention in a second that examples of tools that we are creating at our institute, but it's also a call for cooperation at the European level to create tools which give you reliable information at the classroom level so you can take action. We have landscape surveys mentioned here already, like international surveys, PISA, PIRST teams. They give us a picture of what is happening now. They can tell us something about the trends over time. But again, if you go into subgroups of students, then the evidence is very limited. And we have something which is very rare in education, randomized controlled trials or other impact evaluation methods. Something which is state-of-the-art method in medicine. If you take a drug, believe me, this drug was tested in a number of ways using randomized controlled trials or other methods, whether it's effective or not, whether it's harmful or not. If you think about education, if you have an idea, and this idea is intuitive, it sounds nice, you can implement that next day in the classroom without having it ever tested. This is our reality. We don't have really rigorous studies, randomized controlled trials in our schools, or we don't have enough of them. So what happens if we don't have evidence? I will give you some examples. So learning styles. All of you heard about that we are all learning differently. Some are visual learners, some prefer to listen, some have to do something with their hands. And we have training materials for schools. We have almost all schools in Poland, I think, participating in the training about learning styles and help individualize this approach to every student. It's a very intuitive idea. It sounds good. The problem is there is no evidence in words. Actually, there is evidence if you attach a learning style to a student that you make student believe in the visual learner. It's harmful for a student because we all, of course, if our senses are working correctly, we all learn by hearing and seeing. And that's the most effective way. Another example, knowledge is irrelevant. We have Google now, we work on curriculum now, and many people say, stop teaching knowledge. But then if you don't have knowledge, you get something from ChatGPT, as João just mentioned. How do you evaluate it? How do you know it's true or not true if you don't have knowledge? Another example, maybe closer to our discussions here, sensor integration therapies. I picked that one on purpose because it's one of the most common approaches in Poland. Do we have any evidence it works? When I ask this question in the room, people say, of course we have. We see it works. If you look at research, there is no evidence it works, at least not for all students, in not all cases. And there is very strong evidence that there actually are other approaches which are much more effective, but not that common. And I have personal experience with autism. My daughter is autistic. And so I'm very interested in research about autism and how to support autistic children. And I reviewed that literature 15 years ago, and I reviewed that recently, a few weeks ago. And believe me or not, very few new rigorous studies showing what really works for these children. And that's a shame, because these children are everywhere. We see them in every school, and I see that this intervention applied to these children are not really evidence-based. They're intuition-based. And I know some of them, for the fact, I know the evidence that they don't work. So what can we do? At the classroom level, we have to equip teachers with standardized tools, which are easy to implement. So this standardized tool, by standardized tool, I mean they are research-based, they are easy to implement, which nowadays mostly means they are digital, they are easy to implement for teachers, so they don't have to interpret the results themselves. They get some results, some interpretation on which they can action. And they have to be multidimensional. Like João just mentioned in the previous presentations, we all have different capacities, different challenges. So we have to assess students and help them looking at different dimensions. This is just an example of a tool the team at our institute created. It's a fantastic tool to assess well-being, starting with a subjective evaluation of well-being from students and then decomposing into relationships, self-efficacy, bullying. This is all evidence-based. We have intervention to support every dimension of that. So if something doesn't work, we can already tell them, suggest what to do in the school to improve that. This is something simply which I hope will be implemented and used in every school in Poland and maybe also in Europe. At the national level, we have to invest into monitoring representative studies. Here we have international studies, which I already mentioned. They give us a sample of students, but that's a problem that I mentioned already, that in these studies, very often, we don't have enough students with special needs, for example. If you look at these studies, you will not see autistic children there because they usually do not participate in these studies. We also have administrative data, and that's really powerful too, which is really underutilized. So we collect a lot of information about students in the classroom, in the system, and also in an educational system, but also in other systems. The only thing we have to do is to use this data. We have to lean the databases and look, for example, if I had a children in primary school with some needs, and I apply this intervention or some educational program, what are the outcomes comparing to other children? I just have to look at this data, I just have to download and analyze them without any efforts if they are linked. The problem in many countries is that for privacy issues, we don't collect information of special needs of students or special treatment and so on, or we don't link them with, for example, labor market data or what happens to these children afterwards. If we do that, I will show you an example again from what we are doing in Poland. Impact evaluations, that's very important. I mentioned that already. Randomized control trial as meta-analysis. I will be back to that when discussing European cooperation, but it's very important at national level also to apply that. And knowledge brokering. So this is an example of what data you can have if you use administrative data. Again, the data we already have. We just link them to outcomes on the labor market or what happens to students later when they finish school. And you can see how school students go from one type of school to another, or how many students finish in this place. which is not in education, not in training, not at work. So these are the students very often for which the tools, the interventions we have for inclusive education didn't work. So to understand why they didn't work, we can go backwards, we can see what happened in the schools compared to other schools, and these data are there, we can use them readily. The problem only is that we have to identify these students, we need regulations to do that. And at the European level, we have to support international studies. We have already some evidence, which we discussed here, that without international studies, we wouldn't know, for example, for most countries, what happened during the pandemic. And what we know from international studies, and I co-authored 3 papers already using PERS, is that it's the same picture. Our students lost a lot during pandemic, lost in academic achievement, lost in they have more problems with mental issues, and when you look at learning closures, they are much larger for students, disadvantaged students, those at the bottom of their performance distribution, showing us we will have even more troubles next year if we don't address them. The collecting administrative data. I just mentioned an example from Poland, but it would be really powerful if we cooperate across countries at the European level and exchange this information or link databases. Why? Because many students travel, they move, and especially when you talk, and someone mentioned today, migrant students or refugees from Ukraine, for example, they move a lot. And we don't know what happens to them if they leave our country, leave our system. So exchanging information here would give us really powerful opportunities. And I mentioned randomized control trials impact evaluations. That's very difficult to conduct, especially if you talk about these subgroups of students which are very small, relatively small. That's very difficult to conduct on the large scale in one country. But just imagine a system in which we all cooperate from all countries and we conduct randomized control trials on the same topic, the same intervention, and 10, 15, 30 countries at the same time. That's really powerful. We could learn over, let's say, 5 years what actually works for autistic children. It's just a matter of cooperation and then conducting meta-analysis of research and knowledge brokering. This is a very important thing. Teachers are not experts who will understand research results. They will not read research papers. They will not go to journals to find information. So we need to explain the knowledge which comes from evidence, from research, which in a way which is understood by them, which is actionable for them. Okay, I don't want really to stand between coffee, so I will move quickly here to conclusions. So to make exclusion happen, we need to rely on evidence. I gave you some examples, but if you go to a school in your neighborhood and you critically look at the way students are taught, the way students with specialists are supported, you will see that most of these methods do not rely on evidence, which means they rely on intuitions, on lives, and might be ineffective. And here I have a call for pan-European, European level cooperation in supporting international studies, but also in investing in that kind of rigorous assessments of different interventions. If you want, give me a call, send me an email. I would be very happy to show you the ways to cooperate. We already established networks in Europe in which we participate. I think that's the way for the future. Thank you.
Professor Jakubowski, thank you for the key insights how we can develop inclusive education strategies. Thank you very much.
And to conclude the main program, we would like to now to present to you the sketch notes of Magdalena Rajnej, who is the graphic designer, listening to our conference and noting down the most important aspects of what has been set up to this moment. So this is the sudden map of discussions and presentations. And with that note, we would also like to thank our viewers online. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to see you soon.
And with that, we have reached the end of the official part of our first day.